My goal in this lesson is to teach you how to solo in 5 minutes or less. So we're wasting time already, but just be sure to stick around to the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're both gonna love. If you already know some open chords, that'll work out perfectly because we're gonna be focusing on one chord at a time. Because for example, in much of rock and blues music, we're really soloing over one chord anyway. So we're gonna grab an open A chord, which would be first finger barred across the 2nd fret on the D, G, and B strings, and then you have the open A. But really it's that meaty lower part that we want to focus on. So it's almost like an A power chord. There's a lot of great rock guitar jams that can groove on one chord, you know, like this. So the first step into getting started soloing is we're gonna find the key. So we have this open A chord to work with. We're gonna take the lowest note in that chord, which happens to be the open A string, and that's actually our root note. So what we're gonna do next is find the root note, but starting on the D string. So we already have that open A note, and what's great about that being an open string is that we can drone it out while we're trying to find that root note on the D string. So if we were to start with like playing the open A chord and then open D, 1st fret, 2nd fret, there's something. It's not the same note, but there's some release of tension there. Ooh, there's more tension. Still tense. Aha! We've now reached a note, a point of release of that tension when we find the root note, which happens to be right here, the 7th fret of the D string. What's great about this is it's a very basic form of ear training where you can kind of stumble through some notes until you find something that just gives you that kind of like, that like relief, right? Especially when you've built up a lot of tension by playing a lot of the wrong notes, you know? Aha, right? So you feel that release of the tension. So even if you've never done this before, you'll have an innate sense of knowing where that release happens. And this is a great way for you to find the keys to any song that you're listening to just by stumbling through some notes until you find that point of release. So now that we found the root note, 7th fret of the D string, we're now going to find this group of 6 notes. It's essentially our soloing zone. So now that we have right here our root note, these 6 notes are gonna sort of surround it. So we're gonna take our first finger, we're gonna go 2 frets down, right? And 1 string up, that's gonna be our starting point. So the 5th fret of the A string, play that, and then we play the 7th fret. And then we play 5th fret, 7th fret of the D string. 7th fret being our root note, right? And then 5th fret, 7th fret on the G string. So those are our 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this right here is our little 6-note soloing zone. If you don't already know, there are so many epic moments in guitar history that happened right here within these 6 notes. And now that we have these 6 notes, the next step is to get creative with them. Obviously, we want to play them in a way that's intentional and musical and not just mechanically walking up and down. That's the last thing we want to do. So we're going to use techniques that we like to call guitar linguistics. Little things like slides, bends, hammer-ons, pull-offs, you know, vibrato. All these little things to breathe life into these otherwise static notes. And with these techniques in mind, what we can do now is think about our phrasing. So you know how we tend to have a certain rhythm with the way that we speak? The same thing applies to guitar playing. So this will mean doing things like sustaining notes and leaving space. One thing that you really got to keep in mind though is that as guitar players, we are notorious for overplaying. So to prevent yourself from doing that, here's a tip. Think about a saxophone player, right? Saxophone players, when they play the saxophone, they can only play for as long as they have breath. This gives them an innate sense of pacing with their phrasing, and whether they're taking a short breath or a long breath, you know, you have this very human-like communication with the way that they deliver their music. So what you can do is something similar, is if you're going to start a phrase, to prevent yourself from just, you know, climbing up and down, let's say those 6 notes over and over again, or just going on with like a run-on sentence that just never ends, right? You can just take a deep breath, and then while you exhale, you can play your phrase like... So right there, that was the whole duration while I was slowly exhaling, and then I'll take another breath, And then exhale again. So naturally, the phrasing sounds a bit more intentional, and it has like a better pacing to it. So it's not like you're sitting there and then just continuously playing without really finding a stopping point. So it's a great way to just kind of take a page out of the book of saxophone playing, right? And then just apply this sort of breath technique, and it's gonna build this really like mature sense of pacing, like I said, right? With the way that you handle and the way that you communicate your phrases. So all in all, if we were to just groove on that open A chord and then throw in some notes in that soloing zone, it can be something like this, you know? So now that I've shown you this quick 3-step process to soloing, let me drive the point home even further and show you how you can find it using a different chord. So let's take the open G chord, for example. That one. So step 1, let's find the key. Now in this case, the lowest note is a fretted note. It's the 3rd fret of the low E string. So we don't have the luxury of the open string droning out, but we can still use our ears. We can just really like hammer that note into our ears so we can hear it, right? And then, like right now, you can already tell none of these notes, these are tense notes, right? Ooh, there's some release right there. 5th fret of the D string. Right there, that happens to be a G note. So that is the root note right there. So now that we've found the root note, the next step is to find those 6 notes, right, for our little soloing zone. So we take our first finger, right, 2 frets down from the root note, 1 string up, start there. So 3rd fret to 5th fret on the A string, 3rd fret to 5th fret on D, 3rd fret to 5th fret on G. And there's our 6 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And step 3, we'll get creative with them, right? So if we were to just like play a G chord like, oh, and here's a bonus tip. So when you're working on your phrasing, within these 6 notes, we have our root note, right? Now that root note functions as the perfect safety net for you to land on, let's say, when you conclude a phrase. So that way, it's like if you build tension using these other notes, you can provide that release, which makes you feel like, you know, you're more in control of what you're doing when you're soloing, and especially more in control of like, kind of like what your listeners are feeling when they hear you play, is that you can purposefully use that root note as kind of a safety net. You can start a phrase with the root note, or you can, I mean, I would recommend at least ending the phrases on the root note. So you can go like, you know, as long as you bring it back home, you're always gonna sound right, because as long as you play the root note, you know, of whatever key you're playing in or whatever chord you're playing in, it's just mathematically gonna work out. Just remember to really milk those guitar linguistic techniques, because that's how you're going to be able to play those notes in the most expressive and musical way. So right there was a super quick crash course on how to start soloing using just 1 chord. And you happen to be in the perfect position to learn how to take this concept and apply it over all the chords. Now remember that free gift I owe you now that you've made it to the end of the lesson? Well, that's going to be the very thing that's going to show you how to solo over all the chords and all the keys. Talking, of course, about this bad boy right here. This, my friend, is your free lesson on how to instantly solo in any key. The first thing it's going to show you is how to identify any key on the fretboard in record time. And then it's going to show you a simple formula on how you can solo over any of the keys. And it is 100% yours, 100% free. Just be sure to click here to claim your copy, or check the link in the description box. The guitar is one of the most quickly rewarding instruments that you can play. And it's lessons like these that can show you how to dive right into soloing on guitar, even without any music theory knowledge.